This is the Go Radio Business Show.
Tom,
Yes.
again, another beautiful sunny day in the Gorbals.
Another beautiful. I think the weather's, by the time this goes out, Willie, I think it'll be raining.
Well, I hope no. I hope no. It never rains in the Gorbals. Never. No, that was a lie. Obviously, I need to say to you that the feedback from the show last week has been off the charts. So,
Yep.
well done
No,
on
man.
Singaporean report.
Well done, you as well. I think it's been a catalyst for people to say, oh, we're no happy either. I mean, my phone's been ringing, but as ever, I don't let people just moan. I said, right, well, what are you going to do about it, and where's the solutions? Because you and I always in this show say, you can't come on and just moan. You've got to have a solution as well, which we did offer some solutions. And perhaps this week we could go over. Last week was about the big picture stuff. Where's the big, bold ideas for Scotland? We've got an election coming up in 12 months. Who's got ambition for Scotland? Who's got the big ideas? But maybe this week we can just run through what could be done today. You know, you could do amazing things on housing today.
Yep.
Just with a couple of things there.
Yes.
So do we want to start there?
Well, I think that, and the feedback that I've had for the show as well has been very, very positive, and people are asking the same question. So how do you get towards that? And I think, as you say, there's loads of things in the document where they're a long way away, right? It'll take a bit of longevity, as we said last week, and you need political longevity to deliver some of them. But there is fast wins, right? And one of them, for me, if I'm in the government at the moment, the biggest grief that I've had in the last couple of weeks is all been about housing. So I would take people in a room saying, you know, right, what are we doing just now? What are we doing when we're not just talking about it? And me and you know that there's too much talking goes on and not enough action. So I think for me, you're right, there is things. I was hoping after last week that John Swinney was going to send an invite out to you for you to come in and have a wee chat about what was good and what he thought was not good about the report.
So to be fair, Kate Forbes has reached out.
Yeah.
And she wants a meeting.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll go together.
Yeah.
Because you've been seeing her about housing.
Yep.
It maybe got stuck. Maybe you don't want to talk about it in the show. But, you know, Kate has been tasked with, okay, but, you know, let's see. Of course, we're willing to give our opinion. We give our opinion every week in this show.
Yeah.
But I've made a list of things which could be done tomorrow. You're on the housing thing.
Yeah.
I also believe with a change of government policy on the build to rent stuff, Willie, which you're doing, but this is more the mid-market rent stuff.
Yeah.
I think there's hundreds of millions sitting on the sideline. They won't come to Scotland because they don't know the policy. Yeah. Is there a rent cap? Is there no rent cap? Oh, where are we going? And they just look at it and say, it's easier to go to Manchester. Liverpool even, Newcastle, Birmingham will leave Scotland until they sort it out. Yeah. Well, it can be sorted out.
I think what I'd like to see is I'd love to see a route map of the targets for 100% clean energy.
Right.
I'd like to see, what does Ardrosere mean? What does that bring? Does that bring another 100 million kilowatt, whatever, right? Gigawatt? What is the time frame? And I would be asking the UK government and how they can dovetail with potentially that 28 billion to get us to become the #1 country in the world where we could declare we're the first country in the world to have 100% clean energy. And I think that is not pie in the sky. That is absolutely deliverable. And that's, if I could have one thing that I could ask for, would be that, because that's the thing that makes all the things in the Singaporean report stack up.
Absolutely. So we've got housing, we've got green energy. Going along hand in glove with housing is planning.
Yes.
And there was something in the programme for government delivered by the First Minister about planning, but it's, you know, somebody asked me this week, about Elon Musk's approach to changing things in government. It's probably not going to have made that much of a difference,
Yeah.
Willie, because he takes a chainsaw to it. As you know, when you're trying to bring change in an organisation, you need to bring people with you. Now, not everybody will come with you because some of them will be roadblocks, and I'm afraid they do need to go and work elsewhere.
Yeah.
But in the planning system, I think there's a few quick wins there. In the report, it's taken 5 times as long to get a commercial building through planning than it is in Singapore.
Yeah.
There's no reason for that.
No.
I think the planning system has built up, and the system is satisfying the system.
Yes.
And the layers and all the things that now need to go into it. And we could give them someone to look at this tomorrow who would say, right, do this, do this, do this, and we could transform it.
Yeah. And I think now, we've mentioned we've got Sir Jim McDonald now on board as the chair of Scottish Enterprise. You get people like Willie Watt who understands finance better than anyone. Putting people like that together and getting cleverer people, there is absolutely a solution to this. But you're right, there's 2 or 3 major things that have to be fixed in relation to delivering better on planning and on housing. And unfortunately, that is not going to be a tweak, right? You're going to need to be bold and make big decisions about where the blockers are, and you need to get rid of them.
And you need to remove the blockers.
100%.
And it's firm but fair.
Yeah.
Saying, okay, there's other countries doing this 5 times quicker.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Nobody in the world is copying our planning system.
Yeah.
No, they're not.
No, I don't think so. I don't think anybody was copying anything. It was interesting, I read that Kate said today that we're recognised as world leader in renewables. Well, I'd love to hear that, and I'd love to hear what's behind that, the substance behind that.
Yeah.
But it'd be great to be the number one rather than being world leading. I think we could be that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm delighted to hear that she's reached out and she wants it, because then and then hopefully the First Minister will get a briefing and he will get behind it, and then you can get things moving. Because in order to do the things that we're trying to do, it has to come from the top. It has to come, that leadership has to come from the top, and you have to have a will to deliver on it. But what I would say just on that is, it was interesting that a couple of the commentators, the political and economic commentators, of a couple have had a wee pop about what we had to say last week. No, today, come on the show. Aye. I would love to debate, and especially when somebody says, oh, this is a scheme for the rich to get richer. I never seen anything in that where we make any money. So if anybody thinks that is the case, feel free, you know where we are, go radio, write in, we'll have you on the show and we can debate it.
Yeah, so don't hide behind your paper or your blog. Come face to face.
Yeah, and let's debate it. That'll be interesting.
So the last thing I would say, Willie, and it's something that's easy to say and perhaps hard to do, but Singapore, everybody who wrote to me said, oh, Tom, you go to Singapore, they're pro-business. Yeah. They want to get things done. They're welcoming you to open an office there. Thanks for coming here. We need to make Scotland the most welcoming place in the world to start and grow your business. Yeah. Now, how do you do that? That's got to come from the top. Yeah. When we did the Irish report, and I always get the name wrong, the Taoiseach, the First Minister equivalent of Ireland, he said, if you've got a blocker in the enterprise agency, only one enterprise agency, Jim McDonald needs to get it to one. Yeah. I know it's not politically correct, but it's correct. Yeah. Come to me. So he put that down. If you have an American company and they've got a problem and you can't solve it, you phone me and I'll solve it. Yeah. Imagine we could do that in Scotland.
Let me give you a real great example of what you've just said.
Okay.
Walmart, many years ago, when they first tried to operate in China, they had this plan about opening up thousands of supermarkets across China, and they were welcomed in by the communist government. Right. And things get so bad with local planning, they gave up.
They gave up.
Right, after about 3 or 4, they were giving up. So the president of China got in touch with the Walton family, and they went there, they got a meeting.
Right.
And they said to him, at a meeting with the leader of the country, said, well, really, the local issues, blah, 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 it's more trouble than it's worth. Right. So we'll build a few, but that's fine. Right. So he said, hold on, leave it with me. So he's got an interpreter, they're interpreting, and the guy leaves the room, right? And he's away for 25 minutes, and he comes back with a piece of paper, and he hands it to the representative for Walmart, and it's in Chinese, but then we turn over and it's in English.
Right.
Build anywhere, here is planning permission. Seriously.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, build anywhere, here's planning permission. Right. And that's the difference. That's the difference. And it probably meant billions and billions of investments, for Walmart. And that's what happens. That's what happens when you've got people at the top who realise what you need to do. Yeah. But I think that last week's show is going to run and run and run. I think there's more people. I think when people want to come on to the show to talk about it. It was a great segment with Willie Watt as well for Snib. Yep. It was brilliant. A lot of good feedback about that. Yep. So for all the viewers and listeners, if you think that you want to debate anything that we've been talking about, right? Feel free to write to us and we'll get you on the show.
Yep. Right. I had one commentator in the Herald said that I wanted to take the clothing off the poor. Mm-hmm. Aye. Aye, that's good.
Aye. But
Neil Mackay, get on the show.
Aye. I did read his column, and I was wondering when he was going to tell us then what the solution is, because again it was tax the rich and feed the poor to the extreme, with nothing in between. So yeah, and I think as well on your spot on the BBC and where no one was talking about you when Martin says, but this is about the rich getting richer. Where in the document, this is about for the people. This is for the people. So on that theme. We, over the last few months, and it was interesting, I think I said to you that a journalist in the Daily Record this week picked up one of our shows for months and months ago. Right. Right, there must be a by-election in Hamilton and Lark Hall coming up next couple of weeks. But what he decided to do was take one of our shows for months and months ago where we were slagging Keir Starmer about policies, right, and managed to put that in this week, right, we're out of context. Right. But we have had a wee go, a big go about some of the things that
national insurance and inheritance tax and
but we always keep saying credit where credit's due.
Absolutely. I
think Keir Starmer this week has played an absolute blinder.
Keith Starmer has played a Brahma.
Right?
That should be a headline.
Right. Is that Barack Obama? No, okay. I mean, I think that this deal he's done with the EU is a masterstroke.
Right. Tell us why.
I'll tell you why. Because 48% of the people in England voted no.
Yep.
And according to Scotland and the SNP, 60% of the people in Scotland voted no. So what he's done is he's taken populist politics, but he's taken the positive. Rather than saying a big anti-Nigel Farage, let's stop the boats, it's all about immigration, what he's done is he's taken something that is a positive in populist politics. So, no, let's do this. And what it looks like is, in the face of it at the moment, it looks like he's done a deal that gives us all the goodness of being part of the EU, but takes away all the things, the reasons that Tories put up for coming out. I think this week, he has put all the other political leaders their backs against the wall. Now, I know that Scottish John Swinney has something to say, Kemi Bandel has something to say, but I think deep down, they cannot be happy with this, right? And the only negative we're seeing at the moment is from the fishermen, right? But I seen a couple of journalists today on the TV telling you he's done the exact same deal for the fishermen as was agreed with the Tories in the Brexit deal. All he's done is he extended it for 12 years.
12 years.
Right. So the EU wanted it forever, and he said, no, this is as good as you get. But I think when the dust settles on this, this could be monumental. And I tell you what, of all the things that he's done in the last few months that people were not happy with, I cannot wait to see the polls in June and July and August. I honestly believe that he will get a bounce from this.
So I will always defer to you in politics, Willie.
Mhm.
You know more about it than me. Let me give you some economics
Yeah.
on it. So 9 years ago, it's 9 years ago, the country voted
Yeah.
to come out of the EU.
Yeah.
And I think it was, in economic terms, the biggest self-harm action that a country has ever done.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about the rest of the stuff in the EU,
Yeah.
but from an economic point of view, from a trading point of view, our closest partner, Europe, trading partner is 3 to 4 times bigger than what we trade with America.
Yeah.
People think, oh, we've done a deal with America. No, Europe is closest. And because we come out, and you can say it's not fair or whatever, Europe punished us.
Yes.
And they made it almost impossible
Yep.
for striving, scaling British businesses, Scottish businesses to grow into Europe. And that would have been our first port of call, Willie.
Yep.
It's our closest neighbour. So I've exhausted Britain, my next bit, and it's the biggest trading partner is Europe. That was basically cut off for most businesses. The amount of businesses who come through our scale up program and say it's too hard trying to get into Europe. So it was the biggest economic piece of self-harm that a country has ever done.
Yeah.
Now, you know what they say about economists? They predicted 9 out of the last 3 recessions.
Yes.
So, but it's kind of accepted that the UK economy is about 2.5% smaller because of Brexit.
Yes.
We haven't unleashed the animal spirits and did deals all around the world.
At all.
We didn't.
Yeah.
Maybe Nigel Farage will say, well, we should have,
Yes.
but we didn't.
Yeah.
Under the Tories, we didn't.
Yes.
So I would take my hat off to Keir Starmer from that point of view. But this is a great optics, but the devil's in the detail, as always, on the economics of it. And from what I can see and what I've read last night and this morning, there is an awful lot to get through before we're even starting to get any of that back,
Yes.
Willie. But I do agree, optically, Keir Starmer's put the ball in the back of the net, and he said, right, where do we go for here?
Yeah. And I think it's a wee bit like what we talked about last week about Ireland and Singapore. They didn't care about the rules. And somebody very clever, very smart, whether it's an advisor, whatever they're doing, has said to them, here's what you have to do. And then thereafter, look at what they've said as in economic terms, we'll be 9 billion better off in our GDP by whatever, 2030, 2040, whatever it might be. And that's got to be a good thing. But it can only be a good thing, I believe. But I would still say to him, and this is not dwelling in the negative, if you want to do one more thing this year to get more and more people involved, especially business involved, please, please, please look at your proposal, an inheritance tax with the property relief, right? It should kick in next April, and we're telling you that will be a disaster. And for all these commentators, this is not about the rich getting richer. This is loads of small businesses.
Family business.
Family businesses that will be affected greatly, and there will be another exodus if we don't look at this. So if I get one thing, one ask, please look at the inheritance tax relief, which we're going to bring in April next year, and look at it closely.
And we should discuss that with our guest today. Very successful family business, based in Scotland, but trades all over the place.
And the reason why I bring that up is because, you know, the Anderson brothers who are coming on from Gap, they will tell you this is a big, big concern for them. More than the NI contribution, more than anything, right? So we would definitely say have a look at the BPR relief.
Good. So there's another couple of good news stories. I see them as good news. Craneware, which was founded by a guy I used to know all those years ago, Keith Nielsen. He's come up with software that's for financial systems in the healthcare market. Big $100 million turnover in the States, all over. So Bain Capital, he is floated, but Bain Capital have come in and said, we think we can give you the capital to expand this business, you shouldn't really be on the stock market. So for Keith, I hope he gets what he wants from that. Willie.
I think that obviously Creamere's been a big story in the papers for years and years and years, and it's been a great success. Also on that, I see that Andy Murray, the tennis legend, has also decided now to get involved. He's been an investor in companies and startups. He's been very good, actually.
Yeah.
He's been a seed funder in many businesses, and I see now that he's going to join up with, is it Red Rise Ventures?
Yes.
Right, and he's already invested alongside them in Castori and all of these other there's a few businesses. But when I read that, what was interesting is we should get him on the show.
Definitely.
We should get him on the show, and we'll promise not to talk about tennis.
Andy, getting the show.
Yeah.
But he also put money in with Jim McMahon in Game for Paddle.
Yes. And I must say that was one of my big mistakes when Jim phoned me and told me about paddle and how you could invest in it and get a good return. I says, Jim, I'm busy, and it's taking the world by storm now. In front of you, I was over in Palma there,
Right.
and I went to look at a wee local place that it's got 14 paddle courts.
Was that in Bendon?
Bending it. It's amazing.
I haven't seen it, but I've heard it's amazing.
Amazing.
So, I'm not a sportsman, never played sports in my life. A bit ironic I was in the sports business, but the only sport that I've taken up in my 60s is paddle.
Brilliant.
The Go Radio Business Show with Hunter and Haughey. Hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and never miss an episode.
Tom, two brilliant guests that we've been trying to get on for years.
Years.
Right.
And here we are.
Thank you so much.
Douglas and Ian.
Oh, I'm glad I was going to say that. You remember the names, right? The Anderson brothers.
Yes.
Welcome to the
And
show.
not those Anderson brothers.
No.
Well, thank you for having us on your show.
Well, I mean, I go way back with Gordon Anderson Plant, which is now rebranded as Gap. How long ago did you rebrand it?
Maybe about 20 years ago.
20 years ago. It shows my age.
And everyone has followed us. So if you take Ernest Young, they're now EY.
Okay.
Can't you remember what KPMG stood for? But there was 4 names and
I
it was
know.
KPMG.
Yeah.
So they all copied
Who
us.
knows?
Yeah.
But it's brilliant you've came on the show. It's brilliant you've come on as a double act as well. So what our listeners and viewers are always looking is a wee bit of the backstory of how people got into business. We're always looking for these wee nuggets, and then what happened along the way, how it has been a family business, the positives, perhaps a couple of the negatives, and how you've overcame them. That's really why Willie has this radio station, is to promote Scottish business, and you two are the godfathers of Scottish business.
Wow. What a reputation to live up to. As Douglas is a little bit older than me, he should
Oh.
probably start.
Right.
Yeah.
It's his birthday in August.
All right.
Well, I think, hi, Willie, Tom. The company started in 1969 by our father, and he had already been in the industry,
Right.
the rental, heavy machinery rental. Prior to that, started just after the war. The company that he was involved in sold out in 1967. He ran it for about 2 years, and then he didn't really like the way it was going, so he left and started up Gordon Anderson Plant,
Right.
which was quite good for Ian and I have to say. So they started in 69 doing exactly what he was doing in his old company, which was operated plant, which was 20-ton dump trucks, 14-ton excavators, bulldozers, all big stuff, because that's what he knew.
Right.
And
So you two weren't involved in that?
No.
You were youngsters. And...
yeah,
What's interesting is, I'm sure Douglas will cover that father didn't want us to come into the business
He
straight
didn't?
away. No, he wanted us to go and learn business at someone else's expense.
Okay.
So I
good
worked for a
advice.
bit, yeah. So I worked for Scott JCB, and Douglas will tell you he worked for someone before we joined the family business.
Right.
yes. So that's right. I worked for what was called then Caledonian Tractor and Equipment Company, which became Finnings, which was a Caterpillar dealers out
yeah,
at
the Cotton
Hudding.
Road.
Yeah.
Yes.
They used to be near Baillieston, but they moved up to there. So I was there for 3 years and then joined the family business.
But was it always kind of said that you were going to join the family business?
No,
No, not necessarily.
No, it was only if both sides thought it was going to be to each other's advantage.
Right.
You know, it's quite difficult, and we've got the same problem now with our children. It's getting the timing right. You know, have they got enough determination, commitment, motivation to give as much to the business as we've given to the business? And it's very difficult in the early years to know whether they're going to deliver on that or not. So we're pretty sure now they've got a number of the next generation in the business, and they are fully committed. They work jolly hard, and I don't see any reason why we can't keep growing the business even when us two old fogies were giving up.
What age were you when you came in?
I'd be 25, 26.
22.
Yeah. Did you come in at the same time? No.
No, Douglas was about 4 years before me.
Right.
And interestingly, you know, I worked for Scott JCB, the JCB distributors for Scotland at that time, and I joined in 1983. But the four third generation family members were all worked for other companies. So my eldest son, James, worked for RBS.
Right.
Worked for Muller, the yogurt people. Nicola worked, my daughter who's in the business, worked for Scott JCB. Karen was with GE on mergers and acquisitions, was posted abroad. And Douglas's son, Mark, he trained to be a lawyer. You know, I don't fancy that. Then an accountant. And then he thought, let's give plant hire a go, Tom. So they've all, the four third generation family members who are in the business, all got some experience as we did.
Right. Yeah. And it's because succession's a very interesting thing for us. So from that point of view, what you said, Douglas, was it had to work for both sides. And has that always been a kind of family mantra? Yeah, you can come as long as you want it and we want it.
Well, yes.
How do you deal with it if one side doesn't?
Well, it doesn't really matter if they're a family member. They get treated the same as everybody else.
Right.
They have to. Their price for failure is very, very high. It's higher than anybody else's.
Yeah.
So they have to succeed. So the pressure is huge. But if you enjoy what you're doing, it doesn't feel like pressure. But because if it didn't work out, they would have to go.
Wow.
I haven't had to fire any of them yet.
You know,
There's time.
this time.
So
and how did your father? When did he trust you enough to take over the business?
as I was only asked.
Right.
I don't know, late 80s.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. His father was quite a hands-off manager.
Was he? Right.
You know, when he started the business, he was very hands-on.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it started in '69. I came in '83. I think you were
79,
79. So he'd been going, 10 years before Douglas came in. So he was hands-on. But at that time, we had 3 depots when you joined. So I guess Father thought, right, if Douglas and Ian and Maureen, our sister,
Right.
who's a civil engineer, they're not interested, well, probably just sell the business, because he was, I think, 50 when he started Gap, which is quite
All right.
old,
Okay.
for starting a business, which he knew very well because, as Douglas said, he'd been in that business with Scottish Land. But no, Douglas said the 4 that are in it, they've got a hunger and they've got a passion, and and we still have all the shares, Willie.
Yeah. So holding the reins.
Well, and
Well, I've got my son watching today, so Jamie, I'm taking tips here.
Is Jamie here?
Yes,
Hi,
Jamie.
Jamie.
Yeah.
So how did you decide then the two are in the business at that time? So obviously you're in first, I was like. So was there a transition to who should call the shots, or was it a kind of joint? How did you do that?
Well, it's funny, a lot of people think that may have been an issue or is an issue. It's never been an issue.
Never been an issue.
We've worked together for nearly 40 years, and we've really put hand in heart, so we've never had an argument.
Brilliant.
And you can't have an argument. You simply cannot have an argument. And I don't believe anyway. And you hear it all the time, family businesses where they're all fighting each other. You get nowhere.
No.
Absolutely nowhere.
Oh, it's toxic.
And Ian knows what I'm thinking, and I know what he's thinking.
Right.
So we know when to steer a slightly different path to avoid conflict.
Right.
So you don't need conflict. It's very unproductive.
When you took over for your dad the way back in the day, you said a few depots. So what was the size of the business then, and how have you taken it to another level?
Well, I suppose there's a few milestones.
Yeah.
So father started, it was 3 depots when Douglas joined. And then, so Transformational Deal was a company based in Newcastle. And it was through a good friend of Douglas's. There was one business, because they traded under 4 different names, but they were based in Newcastle. So when we investigated the opportunity to buy the place in Glasgow, God, it's interesting. They've got Dundee, they've got Edinburgh, they've got Newcastle, they've got Middlesbrough and York. So it was probably one of the best early deals we did. And we bought the business, which doubled our size. So to answer your question, probably before that deal, we were turning over about 5 million.
Yeah.
And when we bought the business that was headquartered in Newcastle, it doubled our size.
Yeah.
But it did more than that. It took us into England with
Right.
Newcastle, Middlesbrough and York.
Yep.
Took us into tools, which we didn't do. As Douglas said, we used to be all
Heavy.
big as beautiful with operators.
Yeah.
And then having owned it we bought it in 1986. Within just less than a year, we'd lined up all the operated equipment and sold it.
Sold it.
Sold it. And everyone thought, the Andersons are going bust. They're having to raise money, to pay for whatever.
Yeah.
Best decision we ever made. Because, operators, if you're driving a 3CX, they drive it to the site. You've then got to go and pick them up if it's a 2-day hire, bring them back to get their car. And then when the hire's over, they drive the digger back and you got to run them back. So it was like a taxi service. So sold it out of Linwood, was one of the depots we had. And the company really took off from there.
So then, what did you then do? So then you get out of heavy plant? or-
Yes.
Right, okay.
And that was all in the Central Belt.
So I'm interested how that decision, is one of you lead on it and then the other one goes, great idea, or are you both thinking, how are you coming to that decision?
Well, just to go back a couple of years before that, in 1984, I opened our first greenfield depot in Edinburgh, in
Right.
Sighthill Industrial Estate, and everyone just assumed we were going to open a standard depot like the ones in the West, and
Yep.
that was heavy plant.
Right.
I didn't want any heavy plant, so
So you
all-
decided by then?
well,
It was Douglas's idea.
Right.
well, no, but it was all non-operated plant and tool hire in Sighthill, and bear in mind this is 1984, and it took off like a rocket.
Wow.
Within a year, it was annualized turnover of £1 million, which in '84 was quite a lot.
Yeah. It's real money. It's real
Yeah.
money today as well.
Yeah, so it went really well, and I built it up, ran it for 2 or 3 years, and then
So you learned there, right? This is maybe the future.
well, there was huge demand. The competition were pretty sleepy, so they use the word disruptor now, and I wouldn't say we're a disruptor, but we get into a market that was looking for what we were offering.
Right.
So it went really well And the old man, father, he was very supportive, because I was just on the phone every day. Oh, need more, need more, need more, and the plant just kept pouring in. It kept going out in the hire. So it was easier. It was faster paced, more exciting, but it was easier than, as Ian mentioned, mucking about with drivers who, when they're not out in hire, they're hanging about the yard and you're still paying them. So no use. So it became clear that non-operated plant and tool hire was better.
Right.
And that was in 84. Then the 86 acquisition of Henderson just rammed it down our throat that was the way forward, and the operated plant was a dead loss. Right. So we auctioned it all. One afternoon, all gone.
All gone. Wow. Amazing. That's a bold decision.
Yeah, but we had.
But you never looked back.
No, I never looked back.
Yeah.
You just looked at the P&L, and we produced P&Ls for every location, even back then, and you could look at the operated plant depots that were in Prestwick and Linwood. It's not very exciting. And you looked at Edinburgh and the acquisition of Henderson plant, and I think we paid the purchase price of Henderson Black back in 18 months. It was
that's pretty good.
Unbelievably quite a good payback, Tom.
Yeah, not a bad
And
payment.
was that just bank debt you used?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because obviously when you're in the big stuff, it'd be capital intense, you know, if you're having to fork out the money. Or
But Willie, as usual, you're spot on. The dearer, even today, the more expensive the item, the poorer the return.
yes.
Shouldn't be telling everyone. So other plant hire companies will be saying, "Oh yeah, I think we'll buy some tools now."
Right. So here's a question for you then: of all the small tools plant that you hire, what's the item that you hire out the most?
Are you willing to give that secret? Willie's
Is
pushing
that a
you.
chainsaw?
Well, no, chainsaws, we don't hire them out just in case you saw your leg off, Willie. That'd be a bit embarrassing. You wouldn't be able to drive your car out there. No, probably, power tools, a lot of cordless.
Yeah.
So if you look at the market, how it's changed. So even going back 6 or 7 years, people would have cables, there'd be electric plugged into a transformer and, not as versatile. So now in power tools, all cordless. Battery technology, as it has in cars, has improved significantly.
Right.
Shorter charger times. So probably, and the petrol cutoff. So, it's a archetypal tool. So we've got quite a few of them.
So how many, tell the viewers, listeners, how many depots you have now and what's the size of the business?
Well, our accounts for March 25, we're just beginning lodge shortly. So we're over 300 million. To March 24, it was 303 and a reasonable profit margin. We'll be up 10% on that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And how many staff do you have today?
Just over 2,000.
Wow. Fantastic.
All over the UK now?
Yeah, national.
Yeah.
Right.
Now you see, a lot of people's perception is, Gap, I know them, great Scottish company. Yeah, they do really well in Scotland.
Scottish-based company.
Scottish-based company, but probably only
80% of our business is not in Scotland.
not in Scotland.
So did you grow by acquisition or just organic?
90% by just greenfield openings.
Yeah.
Right.
We're more comfortable with that, and so many acquisitions are not shareholder enhancing.
Yeah.
So
I've done a few of them.
well, that seems to be the way you acquire things to grow market share. But we really didn't care about market share. We just wanted to build up a good business.
Right.
And market share will come. It's a bit slower, but you get there. You don't have to sell any equity in the business. We still own 100% of the business, and that's not going to change. We've not brought in any outside money. It's all bank debt, and we're probably the third or fourth biggest in the UK now on the path we've taken, but we've still got under 5% of the market.
Right.
So it's a very fragmented industry. So the next generation have got it all to play for. There's no pressure, but
they're going to make you rich, are they?
Yeah.
Well, keep me in the lifestyle
Yeah.
I'm
So,
trying to get accustomed
the
to.
small tool hire business in the UK is a $6 billion industry.
Yeah, but that's not just tools, it's plant as well.
Yeah, yeah.
But you've got to remember there's a lot of construction in the UK and in any country in the world. And 60% of our business is infrastructure,
Right.
which you can't stop. The light switch has got to work when you click it on. So 85% of all construction equipment sold in the UK is sold to hire companies.
Right. Wow. Wow.
Contractors own nothing,
Yeah.
and they don't want to own anything, and that's just the way we like it.
Capital light model.
Well, one of our competitors talks about capital light.
Right.
We have there's 5 PLC companies. We, turnover-wise, are the smallest,
Right.
but we're the second biggest on investment in equipment.
Yeah.
So if you run our accounts, we'll have 530 million of historic cost in equipment.
Right.
And on a differentiator for GAP is that we've got over 140 million tied up in property.
Okay.
And if you look at
This depots. And,
Yeah.
Right.
freeholds.
Okay.
And nobody else in the UK rental business has got anywhere near that. Nearest to Sunbelt, about half hours.
Right.
So you think, why does that matter here? How does that give you an edge over other people? Well, in London, I'm sure you know the rental rates that the landlords,
Yep.
it's going up to £40 a square foot.
Wow.
Now, at that rate, I don't care how good you are in planning, you can't make any money at that.
Yeah.
So we own about 65% of the depots
Yeah.
that we operate from. So we've got complete control over it. Can't be kicked out.
Right.
Well, I can give you some good news. I can definitely guarantee you that as I go forward and try to build 10,000 houses, I will be buying nothing. Everything will be rented.
Great. Now remember that, Jamie. would
Yeah,
you?
absolutely.
You're
No, you
taking
can write
over
that
from
in blood. You can write that in blood.
And just as we're, because it always fascinates me, we go from, we joined here, and now we're doing 300 million. What, along the way, for our viewers and listeners, when you look back, lessons learned that you can pass on. I'm sure you've passed it on to your own family, but pass it on to our viewers and listeners.
Well, I'll give you my thoughts.
Oh.
Douglas will
I'll
give.
give Douglas time to think.
Oh, he's a
It
quick
takes me a
thinker.
bit longer.
No, if you look at some of the early mistakes we made, we were dealing in Newcastle, I mentioned to you, paid it back in a year and a half. I thought, this is easy. So we then bought another business in the northwest because the acquisition was all on the northeast.
Yes.
We wanted something in the northwest. So we bought this company, completely buggered. Sorry, clapped out. Shouldn't swear.
I wouldn't get away with that.
Yeah, we're okay. And it took us 3 years to sort it out. It had been badly managed. The lesson we learned there was, don't buy a company unless it's been well run for a very long time.
Yeah.
Because you might think you've got the Midas touch and you can turn things around. Well, we failed. But we didn't fail. It took us 3 years to do that.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of time, a lot of effort, and it's taking your focus away from the bits of the business that are making you money.
Sure.
But Doug said, our growth probably 80% plus has all been organic. But we're big offshore, Tom.
Yeah.
Big offshore. We're in Isle of Man.
Yeah.
We're in Jersey. We're in Guernsey. And it's not for tax evasion or anything. We're just an opportunity Douglas came across to buy the businesses, and there's 3.
Wow.
And competition's not quite so fierce.
Right. Okay.
So on that,
But hang on, we need Douglas.
Oh, sorry, word going.
I'm hanging on the words here.
Well, our sort of determination to be national was a real focus, and it still is. We pretty much achieved the geographical coverage, and we won't go into any product or any sector unless it's scalable. It has to be able to be rolled out across the whole country reasonably quickly. So consistency is right up there. As if we don't have a consistent offering throughout the country, we're no better than the mom and pop stores.
Right.
So consistency for us is vital, and fairness. treat people the way you want to be treated yourself. So,
Right.
you know, we've got a huge number of people who have been with us for 15, 20, 25 years. Guy in Newcastle,
50.
Joe Houston, 52 years.
Wow.
He's just retiring this year.
Wow.
So I'm still not at that. I've got a few more years to go to reach 52.
So I need to ask you this. Obviously, the big thing about implant hire is shrinkage, meaning theft. Is it much better? Does everybody bring the kit back?
No, it's getting worse.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
And, you know, we offer lots of, you know, tracker systems,
Yeah.
but the thieves find a way to find it on the equipment.
Yeah.
Are the police, you know, they'll say they're too stretched to, you know, investigate.
Yeah.
But no, it's a big problem.
Yeah.
And it's on specific products. You know, the bigger the machine we run, 8-ton minis, very few of those get stolen because you can't get it in the back of a transit.
Right.
So it's small tools all the time. 1.5-ton mini excavators, which you can put in a trailer and tow away.
Yeah.
Ram Raiders, we've spent a lot of money on, you know, Ram Raider bars. All the depots have CCTV.
Right.
And that's really from a safety point of view, because you want to make sure that people come to work and go home in the same healthy condition. So if there's an incident, you know, like a loading incident, we can play back the video and see, you know, does the driver need some additional training?
Yeah.
And that's reduced our incidents, you know, at the depot level.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So in the couple of minutes we've got left, what about using it to you know, big up the company? How can people get in touch with you? You know, it's Gap, you know, tool hire, but how? What's your best way of getting in touch if anyone wants to hire plant?
Oh, we've got a website, go on there and all the depot numbers are there.
Yeah.
My phone number is 07767 437 102.
You're the salesman.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah. Now, yeah, so if anyone, I always say to customers, because I still get wheeled out, dusted down, Willie, and I always say, look, if you don't get satisfaction, phone me any time of the day. Or
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Phone me.
Wow.
So we
Remember that number, Tom?
I do. Yes.
Write it down. So
I am
could-
handless, as they say, but my son knows how to work a power plant.
we couldn't let you go without talking a wee bit about politics, right? And obviously we've been involved in the conversation about the old inheritance tax and all the things that, you know, that we have spent time speaking to Johnny Reynolds and the government, and it's trying to get the message across to people about the damage that this will do, right? And it's not about money. It's just about being it's unfair. It's unfair. So we don't need, do you want to go there? Do you want to talk about your views on that?
I printed off 2 of your publications on Scotland and Ireland,
Thank you.
and read through the one about Singapore.
Yes.
And the comparison, you know, the top rate of tax in Scotland, 48%. In Singapore, 24%.
Yep.
And the income that Scotland and the UK earn comes from personal taxation, whereas in Singapore, it's more corporation tax.
Yeah.
So, all I would, and then to answer your question, Willie, on business property relief, it was introduced back in 1974 by Dennis Healy, in
By Labour.
1976, by Labour.
Yes.
Because he realised that then it was 40% inheritance, so people had to sell off bits of their business. And what they should really take on board that whether it's 11,000 people a month leaving the UK, the high worth earners, we need, and another one you mentioned in your report was about talent. And if you get the best talent for your company, the country will have the best companies.
Correct.
And it sounds blindingly, obviously, so simple, but the government, I don't think, are catching on to it.
Yeah.
And the last thing on business property relief, there's no money. So if it goes ahead in April 26, I die, my 3 kids get the shares, they have to find quite a lot of money, which they don't have.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Because the cash isn't there.
cash isn't there.
The business is tied up in plant.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you sell your business, you pay the tax,
Yeah.
capital gains. But when there's no money there, it will. And when you get comments from politicians, well, take out an insurance policy. Well, that'd be quite expensive, and it would restrict our growth, our ability to buy, more equipment. So hopefully, with your discussions our joint discussions with Jonathan Reynolds, who seemed sympathetic when we met him.
Yes.
That he would, and same with Anna.
Politicians seem sympathetic.
Don't believe a word they say. is it?
Once they go back to the office, that's when we got to worry. Well,
All I would say in his defence is when he got back to the office, he remembered about us.
okay.
And he contacted us the following week and put us on to Rachel Reeves' top spad. And I fed in what we'd been saying and what Andrew Malcolm had been saying.
Yes.
And this is people from all politics saying that this is not fair. We didn't like the NI contribution, right, because it was something we never seen coming, but we didn't think it was unfair. But certainly on the BPR, that is and I would be in the same position. I would hate the fact that my son had the excuse to sell my business to pay the tax so he could go away with the rest.
I think all politicians of whatever colour agree, and almost whatever country you're in, agree that an economy has to grow.
Yeah.
And because through growth and creating of wealth, the social programs can be funded, but the measures that are in just now and coming in they are unquestionably anti-business.
Yes.
And there is only one generator. There is only one generator of wealth in any country, and that's a business. It doesn't matter what the business does. That's the only sector that generates wealth, and you can't distribute it until you've made it. So it's blindingly simple. So they should be encouraging business, not discouraging it, which is exactly what they're doing at the moment.
Here.
That's a great note.
Well, I think, Tom, you should send both of those reports to everyone in the Labour Party and say, would you please read this?
I have sent it to every MSP,
Right.
and we're now going to send it down to Westminster.
Yeah.
Good.
And I've had a few replies.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. I know it's taken us a bit of time, but thank you so much for sharing your story with us this morning.
Well, it's a brilliant Scottish-based success story.
Yes.
I know it's a UK business, but Scottish-based, which I'm really proud of. So it's a pleasure to hear it from both the horse's mouth. More power to your elbow.
Well, thank you to Tom. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Willie.
Douglas, thank you.
Yeah.
Tom, another great show.
Great show, Willie.
Love telling you what, the Sonny Gorbals is bringing out the best in you.
I don't know about the best in me, but I loved hearing the story of two Scottish, the godfathers of Scottish business. Brilliant.
Fantastic. So remember, to all who are watching on YouTube or whatever social channel you watch on, hit the subscribe button. Thank you very much.
Thank you. See you next
The Go Radio Business Show with Hunter and Haughey. Hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and never miss an episode.
Go